Good evening. My name is Patty Burns. I'm president of the Round Hill Condominiums at 5400 Roswell Road, Sandy Springs, Georgia. In reviewing the church parking evaluation, neither city has similar traffic or parking conditions. Nashville has four-way intersections, much better roadways, right-of-ways, and therefore much better flow of traffic. Atlanta has a convoluted, overused three-way intersection with several dangerous corners and turn lanes. The suggestion that other churches do not have parking based on the use is void, because other churches have sufficient space to share parking with the larger sanctuary parking requirements. Their accessory uses are much smaller. In our case, the evaluation is implying that the accessory use are the classrooms, where in fact they, along with the offices, are the primary use. The church space is really the smaller accessory use, thus requirement for more parking. Mark Moore, traffic engineer for Sandy Springs, has supplied his calculations based on average daily trips of cars for a 43,000 square foot building, which compares offices with church use. You can refer to the slide for that. Considering the building is mainly office, classroom, and assembly spaces, it stands to reason the numbers would be greater than just all office use. I believe the traffic department has not considered assemblage use of the building as it relates to the amount of traffic it would generate. On the screen you will notice the breakdown of the accident and injury data from the Georgia Department of Transportation for Roswell Road and Glen Ridge Road. Keep in mind the building has been vacant for over 4 years, and that is more than likely that the numbers have decreased. We, the taxpayers, strongly oppose this rezoning. We have collected 9 formal homeowner association letters and over 400 petitions from the surrounding neighborhoods that oppose and will severely be affected. We respectfully ask for the denial of the rezoning and ask the City of Sandy Springs if they are prepared and have plans for the increased parking and traffic. We would hope that the Planning Commission would step back and look at the overall picture of the tremendous growth that this organization has planned. Please do not miss the forest while looking at the trees. Thank you.
I'm Robin Beachy of 20 Willow Glen, representing Willow Glen Condominium Association. I wish to speak briefly about the risks of intensification of the use if the application is allowed. This church has ambitions to grow. Why else would it spend about $5 million on the purchase and plan to spend another $3.5 million on alterations for a building 4 times the size of Dunwoody? Comparisons with Dunwoody are of little value in the parking study. As has been pointed out, Atlanta is a greater catchment area than Nashville. There's a number of organizations associated with Scientology which no undertaking has been given that they would not be brought into the building, thus increasing the parking requirement and the traffic. For example, CCHR, WISE, and Applied Scholastics.
Time.
Just a second. You have, how much more time do you think you need?
I need about another minute and a half.
And the lady behind you?
1 or 2 minutes.
Would it be the pleasure of the Planning Commission to maybe extend the presentation period, say, 4 minutes? Can I get a motion to that effect?
I'll move that.
Get a second, please? All right. Which means we're adding 4 minutes to the applicant also. Ma'am? Yeah, call the vote, I'm sorry. All those in favor?
Aye.
3-2. At this point in time, we'll be adding 4 minutes to both sides for presentation purposes. So who's ever got the clock, if you can take care of that, please. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much indeed, sir. Once a church use is established here for this building, how would it be possible to control such use in the future? If you approve, I suggest you'll be storing up zoning and enforcement problems for the future. This is the time to take a stand against anything but the office use originally granted for this property. Church of Scientology purchased this building with open eyes, and now, and I think Mr. Adams gave a pretty good description of this, it now wants to try to fit a court into a pint pot. The objector's case can be summed up as follows, and I refer to the slides. Inadequate parking has been talked about, but we believe that the figure of 47 that the staff have come up with underestimates the size of the deficiency. Traffic, I think you probably all know this intersection, it's dangerous. and we don't want to add to the danger and the very large number of turning movements that would be involved in the activities of this church. Condition of the property hasn't been mentioned thus far, but it's been mentioned by a number of people to us. It's been in a pretty shabby state for the last 2 or 3 years. There have been complaints about it at the City Council, I think. And you've been supplied with some photos of poor upkeep of Scientology buildings in other cities. We request a denial. This is not an appropriate case for a conditional approval, since to do so would be to approve something significantly different from what the applicant is seeking. In any case, if you accept the staff recommendation, do you know what size of sanctuary you'd be approving if you didn't have the underground? Because it's not part of the plans. We ask you not to engage in the mental gymnastics involved in granting an approval for something for which the applicant is not asking. The right answer here is a denial. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
My name is Sheila O'Shea. I am a resident of Round Hill Condominiums at 5400 Roswell Road, across the street from the property in question. I wish to reiterate my opposition to the proposed rezoning. The property in question was built as an office building, is currently zoned as an office building, and is unsuitable to serve as a church for any religion. Mr. Galloway insists that the parking is adequate for the designated sanctuary space, and that the remaining space should be considered the equivalent of Sunday school classrooms in a traditional church. This is absurdly disingenuous. The classes and counseling are not an adjunct to the practice of Scientology. They are the practice of Scientology. This would be the equivalent of a Catholic church insisting, for parking purposes, that the confessional is the sanctuary and that Mass is held in a classroom. If this rezoning is allowed to go through, it would set a precedent that could easily lead to the founding of the first church of the storage closet in order to slip past existing restrictions. Several days before the very first public meeting regarding this petition, the parking lot of the property was filled to capacity for an event with the existing congregation. As the Church of Scientology grows, I have no interest in hosting any overflow in my parking lot. Mr. Galloway states that larger events will be hosted off-site, but provides no details. I am not reassured by this, given the Church of Scientology's long-standing reputation for saying one thing and proceeding to do another. Some would argue that by denying the rezoning, the City of Sandy Springs would be in possible violation of the Religious Land Use and Institutionalized Persons Act. However, the law itself reads in part as follows: no government shall impose or implement a land use regulation in a manner that imposes a substantial burden on the religious exercise of a person, including a religious assembly or institution, unless the government demonstrates that the imposition... I have half a page left.
Well, we've extended one time, and I think we're pretty much ready to go on forward, if that's all right. Thank you for your time. Rebuttal, Mr. Galloway? Okay, are we supposed to be able to read that?
No, you're not. But what I did was I put up the Sandy Springs parking regulations on a board so you would see them. They are definitive and they're clear. If you look at the Sandy Springs parking regulations, they say that you are to park based on the size of the largest assembly area. And in this case, we have done the math, staff has done the math, and there is an excess of parking based on your own code. What they're asking you to do is to apply a multi-use parking regulation to a church, where every use, whether it's the office, whether it's the sanctuary, or whether it is the religious classrooms, every single use is an integral part of their practice of their religion. And there is a definitive classification for parking and for churches and other places of worship in your ordinance that you need to apply.